The mall was alive with its usual chaos: bright lights, echoing footsteps, laughter bouncing off polished floors. The distant music of storefront speakers blending into a constant hum when a single sound sliced through it all like a knife. A child's cry, sharp, panicked, and unbearably alone. The kind of cry that makes your heart jolt before your mind can catch up. Most people heard it and kept walking, glancing around briefly before returning to their phones, their shopping bags, their carefully planned afternoons. But she stopped. Her name was Sarah, and she hadn't planned on being a hero that day. She was just there to buy a gift, maybe grab a coffee, and head home. Yet something in that cry reached into a place she couldn't ignore. She followed the sound past a clothing store and into a wide open space near the food court, where she saw him, a small boy, no more than 4, sitting on the cold tiled floor. Tears streaming down his red face, his tiny hands clutching a blue toy car like it was the only solid thing left in the world. People stepped around him as if he were part of the furniture, an inconvenience in the flow of their day. And that was the moment something shifted inside Sarah. She knelt down slowly, lowering herself to his level, careful not to startle him, and spoke in the gentlest voice she could manage, asking his name, asking if he was hurt, asking where his parents were. But at first all she got was sobbing so deep it seemed to shake his whole body. She didn't rush him. She didn't pull out her phone. She didn't call security right away. She simply stayed, offering her presence like a quiet shelter in the storm. And after a few moments, the boy's cries softened into hiccuping breaths. His name, he managed to whisper, was Adam, and he had been holding his mother's hand when someone bumped into them, and suddenly her hand was gone. He had turned in circles, calling for her, but the crowd swallowed his voice, and fear had taken over. Sarah felt her chest tighten as she listened, imagining how enormous and terrifying the world must feel from his height when you're suddenly alone. She reassured him again and again that his mother was looking for him too, that they would find her together, and she offered to hold his hand if that would help, which he accepted without hesitation, his small fingers wrapping around hers with surprising strength. Around them a few people slowed down, watching now, curiosity replacing indifference, and someone murmured that security should be called. But Sarah calmly nodded and said it already had been, even though she hadn't yet, because she knew the most important thing in that moment wasn't procedure, it was trust. She guided Adam to a nearby bench, wiped his tears with a tissue from her bag, and asked him about his toy car, listening intently as he explained between sniffles how it was his favorite and how his mom had bought it for him, because he'd been brave at the doctor. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, his breathing steadied, his shoulders relaxed, and the fear in his eyes dimmed just a little. What Sarah didn't know, as she sat there offering comfort to a crying child in the middle of a crowded mall, was that her simple act of stopping, of choosing compassion over convenience, was about to set off a chain of moments that would ripple far beyond that bench, drawing strangers together, softening hardened hearts, and reminding everyone who witnessed it that kindness still exists. Even in places where we least expect it. Security arrived quietly, not with flashing urgency but with practiced calm, and Sarah felt a subtle shift in the air as people began to gather, drawn by the sight of a uniformed guard crouching beside a small boy and a woman who looked like she belonged there. Like this was exactly where she was meant to be. Adam squeezed Sarah's hand tighter when the guard spoke, his fear threatening to resurface, and Sarah gently explained who the man was, how his job was to help lost kids find their parents, never letting go, never making Adam feel like he was being passed off. The guard radioed in Adam's description: blue jacket, toy car, brown curls, wide eyes still glassy with tears on. Within minutes the message echoed through the mall's quiet systems, carried invisibly through hallways and shops. As they waited, something unexpected began to happen. A woman from a nearby cafe brought over a small cup of juice without being asked, placing it carefully on the bench and smiling softly at Adam before walking away. An elderly man paused and told Adam that once, long ago, he had gotten lost too, and everything turned out okay, his voice trembling with memory. A teenage girl stopped scrolling on her phone long enough to kneel down and make Adam laugh by pretending his toy car was racing across the bench. One by one, strangers slowed, then stopped, then stayed, forming a loose circle around a moment that mattered. Sarah noticed how the usual impatience of the mall faded, replaced by a shared purpose that didn't need words. Somewhere nearby, Adam's mother was running, panic burning through her chest as she searched every aisle, every store, her mind screaming worst-case scenarios she couldn't shut off. And though Sarah didn't know her yet, She felt an almost physical pull toward the woman, as if empathy itself could cross distance. Adam sipped his juice now, his small hands less shaky, asking every few seconds if his mum was coming. And every time Sarah answered honestly but confidently, saying yes, because saying anything else wasn't an option. The guard received updates, over with his radio no sightings yet, checking exits, coordinating with customer service, and each update was a reminder of how quickly fear spreads and how desperately we rely on each other in moments like this. Sarah caught herself thinking about how easily she could have walked past that first cry, how close she had been to becoming just another person with a bag in her hand and somewhere else to be, and the thought made her stomach twist. What if everyone assumes someone else will help? What if kindness is always waiting for the first brave pause? Adam leaned against her now, exhaustion settling in after the emotional storm. His head resting against her arm like it belonged there, and she adjusted, instinctively, creating a space where he could feel safe without question. Around them, the circle of strangers remained, no one rushing off, no one complaining, all of them silently invested in the outcome, as if this one small boy had become everyone's responsibility. Then, suddenly, a sound cut through the gentle murmur, not a cry this time, but a voice calling a name with desperate urgency, growing louder with every step. Adam. The word echoed, cracked, with fear and hope colliding, and Adam's head snapped up, his eyes wide, his body tensing as if unsure whether to believe what he was hearing. The guard stood, scanning the crowd, and Sarah felt her own heart begin to race, sensing that the moment they'd all been waiting for was about to arrive. Adam clutched his toy car and whispered, "That sounds like my mum." And in that instant, everyone held their breath, because sometimes the most powerful moments in life come right after the longest waits. And none of them knew yet just how deeply this reunion would affect them all. The voice came again, louder now, breaking through the crowd like a lifeline thrown into rough water. And before the guard could even respond, Adam was already on his feet, his small body vibrating with hope and fear tangled together. "Mum," he shouted, his voice raw but determined, and the sound seemed to ripple outward, parting people as a woman pushed through the gathering circle, her face pale, eyes wild, hair slightly undone as if she had been running without caring who saw. The moment she saw Adam, everything else vanished. Her knees nearly gave out as she dropped to the floor, arms wide open, and Adam ran into them with a force that knocked the breath from her chest. She wrapped herself around him, sobbing openly, apologizing over and over, pressing her face into his hair as if she needed to feel him breathing to believe he was real. For a few seconds, the mall ceased to exist. The noise, the light, the movement, all of it faded behind the raw intensity of a mother finding her child again. People nearby wiped their eyes without embarrassment, strangers suddenly united by the weight of the moment. Sarah stood just a step back, giving them space but unable to look away, her own vision blurring as she watched Adam's mother rock him back and forth, whispering his name like a prayer she had almost lost. When she finally looked up, her eyes met Sarah's, and in that glance was a depth of gratitude so fierce it felt like a physical force. She reached out with one trembling hand and gripped Sarah's arm, her voice breaking as she tried to speak, words tumbling out in fragments. "Thank you." I turned for 1 second. I thought I'd lost him. I don't know what I would have done. Each sentence heavy with the terror she had just survived. Sarah shook her head gently, telling her it was okay, that Adam had been brave, that they had found each other again, but she knew those words barely scratched the surface of what had happened here. The security guard cleared his throat softly, reminding them they could move somewhere quieter, but no one rushed them. Even the guard seemed to understand that some moments need to unfold at their own pace. Adam pulled back slightly, still clinging to his mother, and pointed at Sarah with his toy car, announcing proudly that she had stayed with him and made the scary part go away. And that simple declaration did something profound. It shifted the focus from fear to kindness, from loss to connection. The mother turned fully towards Sarah then, standing up and holding Adam close, her shoulders still shaking, and she hugged Sarah without asking, as spontaneous. Around them, the crowd broke into gentle applause, not loud or celebratory, but soft and sincere, as if everyone needed to release the emotion they had been holding inside. Sarah felt overwhelmed, embarrassed, honored, all at once, and she kept thinking how small her actions had felt in the moment, how natural it had been to stop, to listen, to care, and yet here she was, Surrounded by proof that small choices can carry enormous weight, Adam's mother insisted on learning her name, repeating it like she didn't want to forget it, promising that this kindness would stay with her forever, and Sarah believed her, because experiences like this carve themselves into your memory. As the crowd slowly dispersed and the mall's usual rhythm began to creep back in, something had undeniably changed. People walked away softer than before, a little more aware of each other, a little more open to the idea that we are all connected by moments we don't plan. Sarah watched as Adam and his mother prepared to leave, Adam turning back one last time to wave at her, his smile bright and fearless now, and she waved back, her heart full in a way she hadn't expected when she first heard that cry. What she still didn't realize was that this story wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot, because the ripple of kindness she had started was still moving, touching lives in ways she could never have predicted. Asterisk as Adam and his mother disappeared into the crowd, the mall slowly returned to its familiar rhythm. But the people who had witnessed the reunion carried something new with them, a quiet warmth that refused to fade. Sarah felt it too as she finally stood up, her legs slightly shaky, her shopping bag still hanging untouched from her arm, a reminder of how trivial her original plans now seemed. She took a deep breath and started walking, but after only a few steps she'll notice people smiling at her more, knowing smiles from strangers who had shared that moment, as if they were all part of an unspoken agreement to be better versions of themselves. Near the cafe, the woman who had brought the juice earlier caught Sarah's eye and raised her cup in a silent toast. A security guard nodded at her with genuine respect instead of routine professionalism. Even a hurried businessman slowed long, enough to say, "You did a good thing," before moving on, his voice carrying more sincerity than he probably realized. Sarah felt almost overwhelmed by the attention, because she didn't see herself as someone special. She had simply done what felt right. Yet, as she continued through the mall, she began to notice changes that had nothing to do with her directly. A young couple stopped to help an elderly woman pick up items she had dropped. A store clerk patiently calmed a frustrated customer instead of snapping back. A father crouched down to listen intently to his child instead of tugging him along. It was subtle, almost invisible if you weren't paying attention. But Sarah was paying attention now, and she could feel the atmosphere shift, like kindness had become contagious. She sat down with her coffee near a railing overlooking the lower level, trying to process everything, when her phone buzzed with a notification she didn't expect. A stranger had recorded part of the reunion, the hug, the tears, the applause, posted it online with a simple caption about humanity still being alive. The video was already spreading, comments pouring in from people who had been moved by it, people who said they would stop the next time they saw someone in need, people who admitted they usually looked away but wouldn't anymore. Sarah stared at the screen, stunned, realizing that the moment she thought was private, fleeting, and small had traveled far beyond the walls of the mall. She worried briefly about the attention, about being misunderstood, but then she read a comment from a parent who said the video reminded them to hold their child's hand a little tighter, and another from someone who said they had helped a lost kid once and had never forgotten it. And she understood that this wasn't about her hit, was about the message. Later that evening, as she walked out into the fading daylight, she received another message, this one from Adam's mother. The security desk had passed along Sarah's name, and with it came a heartfelt note that left Sarah sitting in her car, tears streaming down her face. The message spoke of fear and gratitude, of how Adam had fallen asleep clutching his toy car and telling the story of the nice lady who stayed, of how that kindness had restored her faith on a day she had almost lost it. Sarah placed her phone down and rested her forehead against the steering wheel, feeling the full weight of what had happened settle into her chest. She realized then that kindness doesn't end when the moment passes. It echoes, it multiplies, it reaches people you will never meet. And somewhere deep inside, she sensed that this story still had one final turn left. One more reminder waiting to be revealed. Something that would tie it all together in a way no one could have predicted. Asterisk days passed, yet the moment refused to fade. Sarah returned to her normal routine work, errands, quiet evenings, but something inside her had permanently shifted. Like a window had been opened and fresh air kept flowing in no matter where she went. She noticed people more now, the tired cashier forcing a smile, the lonely woman sitting alone on a bus bench, the child tugging at a distracted parent's sleeve. That single cry in the mall had tuned her heart to a frequency she hadn't realized she'd been missing. One afternoon, she received another message from Adam's mother, this time with a photo attached. Adam was standing in his living room, holding the same blue toy car, smiling proudly at the camera. The message explained how he had been acting braver lately, how he told his story to anyone who would listen, how he said that when you're scared, someone kind will come if you just stay still and wait. Sarah read the words over and over, humbled by the realization that a child's understanding of the world had been reshaped by a few minutes of compassion. Around the same time, the video from the mall continued to spread, not because it was dramatic or polished, but because it was real. Comment sections filled with strangers sharing their own stories of stopping, helping, caring moments they had once thought were insignificant, now seen through a different lens. Some wrote that the video made them cry in the middle of their lunch break. Others said it restored their faith on a day when they badly needed it. Sarah never responded publicly, never tried to claim the spotlight, because she understood something important. Kindness isn't meant to be owned, it's meant to be passed on. Weeks later, she found herself back at the same mall, standing near the same spot where Adam had cried. The floor looked the same, the noise was just as loud, people were just as busy, but to Sarah, it felt sacred, marked by an invisible reminder of what can happen when one person chooses to stop. As she turned to leave, she noticed a young woman, kneeling beside an elderly man who had dropped his belongings, and nearby, a child gently holding a sibling's hand through the crowd. She smiled softly, realizing that maybe, just maybe, the ripple was still moving. That night, as Sarah reflected on everything, she understood why the moment had touched so many hearts. It wasn't about a lost child or a relieved mother or even a helpful stranger. It was about proof that humanity isn't gone, just quiet. Proof that kindness doesn't need permission or preparation. Proof that even in the busiest places, love can break through the noise. Somewhere out there, Adam would grow up remembering that the world, though big and scary, had once met him with warmth. Somewhere else, a stranger would choose to stop because they remembered a story they had seen. And in that simple chain of moments, faith in people, in goodness, in humanity would keep finding its way back, one small act at a time.